Welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. We have an exciting show in store for you this morning. Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski will be our guest, former congressman, chairman of the Steuben County Republican Committee. So you can ask him federal, state, and local questions. We'll get those questions in throughout the morning, and we'll do our best to get to all of them when Joe joins us in, well, most likely the 7 o'clock hour. Sometimes he arrives a little early, and we like to put him right on set, as they say. I'm going to get to some viewer comments that we missed yesterday. Before that, it is being reported, and we're going to ask Joe if he knows more about it. It's being reported out of our friends at WLEA in Hornell that Steuben County is going to appeal the county judge's decision in favor of Allard. Now, you may have heard that the vote was actually 9-8 not to appeal that decision, but the county is moving forward anyway. We're going to try to get more information for you. This is a breaking story. You've been following it right along with not only the I don't like to use it, it's not the right word, the lawsuit against the county. I'm drawing a blank on what word to use, but against the county because they were trying to take away or make essentially Sheriff Allard pay for his insurance, really making it impossible for him to do his job, to pay to do his job, essentially. So anyway, just to kind of paraphrase this really quickly, he went to the county, went through the legal system, and he was found completely in the right. They were also criticized for their use of executive session, et cetera, et cetera. Well, fast forward, you think it's all over but the shouting. Cost taxpayers somewhere in the $200,000, $250,000 range, and I guess not knowing when to stop digging, the county is now going to appeal. We are going to talk with the sheriff next Tuesday. I booked him for next Tuesday because we're already booked up today, tomorrow, Monday. So he will be joining us on Tuesday so we can find out more about it. And when we get the exact information for you, again, this is breaking news coming out of WLEA in Hornell, that Steuben County is going to appeal the county judge's decision in favor of Allard. We just don't have a lot of the information, but hopefully we'll get more from Joe today, and also find out a little more of the details as it unfolds these next few days. So that's breaking story. Now let's go to viewer comments. Great show, Frank. I appreciate the discussion about the Hull Act. Yeah, we do have a couple updates on the correctional facility strike that is going on, strike protest, depending on where you go, as to who calls it what. We're glad to bring that information to you, and that's another question we'll be asking Joe Sempolinski. Here's one. I had a friend who died a few weeks ago. I'm sorry to hear that, at age 92. Sorry to hear that. He did Cold War service with the Army in Alaska. When he would start blathering about Trump, I would say, poor Dave, he thought the fascist would be coming across the Bering Strait. It turns out he came down an escalator in Midtown Manhattan. Thank you for that. Comment from a different viewer. Apparently, Cory Booker didn't get the memo that it is illegal for senators to be paid speaking fees. He made that error when trying to explain his sudden increase in net worth. The Democrats, what's it say here? They have money passed through a publisher, so you can claim it as a book sale. Thank you, Fred. Comment from another viewer. Thank you. Oh, here we go. I'm so glad Democrats are watching the show. Yes, we've been getting some comments from people not the biggest fans of Trump, and we welcome everyone to Frankly Speaking. Comment from another viewer. Thank you, Frank, for another great show. Great comments came in. A lot of knowledge out there. I agree. We do have a lot of knowledgeable, on top of things, viewers, and I can't thank you enough for the comments that we receive. And finally, and I hate to end on this comment, and these are all comments I received either right towards the end of yesterday's program or throughout the day. Hamas to return the bodies of children they murdered. Hope all those protesters are proud. And on that note, what a tragic, tragic story. And in reference to what that viewer was saying, just as of Tuesday in Brooklyn, there was the pro-Hamas, anti-Israel as the New York Post calls them, fiends, protesting in the street, saying horrific things. Bethany Mandel from the Post puts it this way: Brooklyn's depraved pro-Hamas fiends back the slaughter of babies. Brooklyn demonstrators don't wish for peace. They wish for destruction and more death. Now, to that viewer's comment, I think they are proud, unfortunately. So when you see these protests on college campuses, you see them in the streets of New York City, remember the story of what we heard yesterday, where Hamas released the body of 4 Israelis, including toddlers. And I hope I'm going to do my best in pronunciation. Kafir, Ariel, Bibas, and their mom after they were killed in Gaza. One, the youngest in captive in Gaza, was taken when he was just 9 months old. The heartbreaking exchange saw the terror group hand over the bodies of Kafir Bibas, along with his brother Ariel, who was taken when he was just 4. Their mother, Shiri, 33 years old, and Oded Lif, 84 years old. The bodies of the Bibas family, whose kidnapping video became a symbol for the horrors of October 7th, are set to be transferred to Israel, where a funeral will be held for them. The 4 coffins containing the victim were displayed on stage in front of a disturbing mural depicting a bleeding Netanyahu standing over pictures of the Bibas family and lift shifts alongside a propagandist inscription. It's so tragic. As a matter of fact, it's heartbreaking. And this is what, when we see this is what we've been talking about from the beginning, where it is the right for Israel to defend themselves. And when you see so much anti-Semitism on college campuses and in the streets, it just blows your mind. It's something you can't even wrap your head around when you see this horrific, the 4 bodies, including toddlers, being given back to Israel. Congressman Nick Langworthy weighed in on this, saying, "I am utterly devastated to hear that Israeli hostages Shiri Bibas, her 2 beautiful sons, Ariel and Kafir, and Oded Lifshitz, were senselessly murdered by the depraved, evil forces of Hamas. The savage murder of these innocent lives and children should shock the conscience of the world. Shortly after the attacks, I had the somber privilege of traveling to Israel and visiting Kibbutz near Oz, a place forever marked by the horrors inflicted on its people. I stood in the Bibas home and mourned with a community ravaged by inconceivable brutality. This heartbreaking news must only strengthen our resolve to eradicate Hamas from the face of the earth. We mourn with the victims' families and all of Israel and pledge to honor the memory of all the hostages whose lives were stolen far too soon." So thank you to Congressman Nick Langworthy for that message this morning. This is obviously not the way we want to begin a program, but it is necessary to, again, highlight, as Representative Langworthy said, the brutality of Hamas. And it's something that we must keep in mind as there are talks, and especially during the Biden administration, of tying the hands of Israel. That has not been the case, of course, with the Trump administration, and that is why we're seeing the release of more hostages. But in this case, the tragic release of 4 bodies, including toddlers, back to Israel. So on that somber note, we're going to take our first break. When we come back, we have some other updates from yesterday's program. As I mentioned, today, Joe Sempolinski will be on the program. Tomorrow, it is Friday with Phil. Phil Palmisano will be joining us Monday. We'll be hearing from the Crystal Chords. We look forward to that. Crystal Chords always providing such great music during the telethon here on Frankly Speaking, but they have a show coming up, but they always bring us a song or two. So we look forward to the Crystal Chords joining us on Monday, and then on a Tuesday, Sheriff Jim Allard to give us an update, because, again, it is being reported by WLEA that Steuben County is going to appeal the judge's decision, the judge that found in favor of Sheriff Allard. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Let's go to some viewer comments. Maybe if you feel the need to step on the American flag and wave one from a foreign country, you should be deported. P.S. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning to you, too. It's burning the American flag, not just stepping on it. And if you saw the protest, as we were making reference to earlier, I mean, just that was on Tuesday, as just yesterday, Hamas released the bodies of 4 Israelis, including the 2 toddlers and their mother. But yet you saw protests on the streets in Brooklyn that are either pro-Hamas, anti-Israel, and both. It's despicable. Yes. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, hey, good morning, Mark. I see Doge is cutting the Pentagon by 8%. They found more waste. Yes. And Trump is trying to end the New York City congestion fee of $9, and Hochul is really trying to fight it. I wasn't going to jump to this, but it is definitely worth mentioning. Trump, there's no way this isn't a winning issue for him. The people of New York City have spoken. They do not like this congestion tax. So President Trump's administration signed what you could call the death warrant for New York's congestion pricing scheme. Well, got a little stuffed up there for a minute. A move widely cheered as a win for the working class. In a letter to Governor Kathy Hochul, U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said he'd be pulling federal approval of the deeply unpopular program, which he called a slap in the face to working class Americans and small business owners. Quote, every American should be able to access New York City regardless of their economic means. It shouldn't be reserved for an elite few. The Federal Highway Administration will work with the New York State Department of Transportation on an orderly termination of the program, which charges drivers $9 to enter Manhattan below 60th Street. And Trump tweeted out, and if you go to the kind of the mainstream media or the left media, they're outraged that he called himself a king. But he tweeted out, congestion pricing is dead. Manhattan and all of New York is saved. Long live the king. So Governor Hochul, in a defiant press conference, boy, I wish she had this kind of fight in her for, I don't know, public safety, maybe a fight in her for the corrections officers. And because we've seen what the HALT Act has done, and we've seen specifically the overtime, involuntary overtime. I wish she had that kind of fight for those issues. But no, when it comes to a tax on everyday workers, that's when she finally has the backbone, saying, President Donald Trump tweeted, long live the king. I'm here to say New York hasn't had a king in over 250 years. We sure as heck are not going to start. It feels like the commuters of our city and region are now the roadkill on Donald Trump's revenge tour against New York. She then said, I don't know. It's tough to watch someone that has no fight in her then say, quote, we're in fight mode. And it's not even, you understand political statements, and they can make you mad, they can make you cringe, whatever the case may be. This case cringe because it wasn't even a good opener. I mean, there's many ways you could attack Trump for it. If you think he was calling himself the king, there's better ways to do that than how she started that with her tough talk that kind of fell flat. But now she says we're in fight mode. This is real life for New Yorkers, she said. It's an attack on New York's sovereignty by a self-proclaimed king. So we're in fight mode. We do not back down, not now, not ever. So let me ask you, and we're not in New York City, obviously, but if you're in New York City, is this the stance that you want your governor to really go all in on, to really go in on the fight? I mean, you've got to be sitting there after paying $9 to go certain parts, maybe to travel home, to travel to work, and you've got to say, this is where the governor, quote unquote, defends New York City. Not about public safety, not our corrections officers. We could go, the list can go on and on. But she gets into fight mode because Donald Trump had the audacity to say, hey, maybe New York workers and taxpayers shouldn't be forced to pay a $9 congestion price. So is this a winning position for the governor, or is it a winning position for Donald Trump? I will pose that question to you. It's very much like we're seeing with all these cuts from Doge, to tie it back into what Mark was saying. There's articles, and I saw a news piece this morning when I was getting around for work, where they claim they've cut $55 billion, but it's only $16 billion. Oh, okay, $16 billion is still a lot of money. It's just, I don't know how you take that position where you say, we're going to stand strong on government waste, fraud, and corruption. We're going to stand strong on attacks on everyday New York workers. If that's, the old saying, the hill you want to die on, I guess go for that fight. I don't see it being a winning battle. But again, that's the battle that they have chosen. So Governor Hochul, look out. She's in fight mode. Hochul went on to claim that New York is under siege by Washington and that it feels like the commuters of our city and our region are now the roadkill on Donald Trump's revenge tour against New York. Again, if you're that person paying $9 every time you have to go somewhere, do you really feel like you've been left as roadkill now? Or do you feel betrayed by your governor for attacks on not just the everyday worker, but obviously that trickles into so many facets of New York City life and ours when you talk about trucks and shipments coming through paying that? I don't know. I would also ask for the corrections officers that have been standing in the bitter cold for their rights. Are you glad that this is where Governor Hochul gets tough? Are you glad this is her priority? Is this what it's all about? It's just, I don't get the side of it. Just like with Doge, that says, I think I can win with the position of we need to keep wasting money, or we need to keep taxing people, and Trump is bad for doing the opposite. Now, Hochul did activate 3,500 National Guard members as a judge granted orders prohibiting the corrections officers from striking. The governor's orders also provide for additional overtime for corrections officers and other staff who are working, said Hochul, who also directed state agencies to retain independent mediator Martin Scheinman to negotiate an end to what she again called a, quote, illegal work stoppage. So she's tough that she wants that congestion tax. She's tough on now illegal work stoppages. Think of how many times Governor Hochul has stood with an organization striking or standing with the union. But boy, when it comes to our corrections, people were even sending me pictures yesterday. And thank you for all the pictures from the protest/strike, but also sending me pictures in the past of Governor Hochul standing with the unions and having that sign. I also, and maybe we can ask, because I know we have some corrections officers here that watch the program. How does it work? And I have so many people ask me this. How does it work that they can just force overtime for so many hours? We heard from Congressman Langworthy yesterday, who stands very strong with the corrections officers, had a great speech on it. But talking about 24-hour shifts, 36-hour shifts, the only reason I ask is because someone had mentioned this yesterday on the program. Where is OSHA in this scenario? I mean, in any work environment that you're in, here at the station, they don't say, okay, Frank, we're going to need you to be on the hour, we're going to need you to be on the air for 24 hours straight. I mean, the labor department would get in. But if it's Governor Hochul, I guess the labor laws don't apply. But again, tough talking on congestion pricing and tough talking when it comes to shutting down, quote, illegal work stoppages. Prison guards have called for the repeal of the HALT Act, as you know, more staffing and changes to mandated overtime. However, Hochul released a video statement on Wednesday condemning the demonstrations, condemning the strikes. Pro-union, Governor Hochul. She says the illegal striking workers are jeopardizing the safety of their colleagues and the prisoners. When has she worried about the safety with the HALT Act? When is she worried about the safety of their colleagues or the prisoners? We had those numbers for you yesterday about how much. There's no denying, even if you are a pro-HALT Act person, there's no denying the massive increase in inmate violence and inmate on staff violence. There is no denying it. So she said it also creates an issue for the residents in the communities surrounding the prisons. I'm not going to go through the whole letter because it gets a little wonky, but protests formed at facilities from the Hudson Valley to Western New York, where the action started Monday with 3 unsanctioned strikes at Collins, Elmira, and Groveland Correctional Facility. Yeah, I mean, I guess if these are things you want to hitch your wagon to, hang your hat on, I guess. I wish we had a governor that would fight for our rights, fight for public safety, fight for our corrections officers. Now they're claiming, because I think some people in politics are reading the writing on the wall over this, some New York lawmakers are open to correction reforms this budget cycle. Well, I know, just like we talk about with bail reform, when I hear the word reform, it raises the red flag, because we talk about bail reform, there's the HALT Act, these type of things that the governor is standing strong on that has led to such a problem with public safety. And you would think she would have learned by almost being defeated by Lee Zeldin that maybe she should consider being strong at all on public safety, but instead, not strong on public safety, strong on fighting to keep that congestion toll and ending illegal work actions. What was it? Illegal strike actions, or however she said, work stoppage or whatever. Illegal work stoppage. There we go. All right, let's take a break. I see some comments, some waves coming in. I'll do a better job today counting the waves. Yesterday, we got so distracted. By the way, if you are just joining us, Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski, former congressman, will be joining us in the 7 o'clock hour. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Give them a call today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. We're getting a lot of waves, a lot of comments. Let's get to the comments. The House is to investigate Schumer over threats to Supreme Court justices and violent speech. I actually think it's, according to Reuters, it's the top U.S. prosecutor in Washington launched an investigation on Wednesday into threats against federal workers and said the department would probe Democrat Senator Chuck Schumer after people working in Elon Musk's drive to downsize and overhaul the government said they had been threatened. Interim U.S. Attorney Ed Martin said in an email that the probes were inspired by a conversation with an employee at Doge. So that's a little bit of an update there. Thank you for sending that along. I always appreciate it. Comment from a different viewer. Hochul is the dictator. Yes, thank you very much. Comment from another viewer. Hochul is driven and more likely exempt from the $9 fee. Well, even if she's not exempt, we're paying for it. I mean, one thing is she's more an Albany person. She's not one to be around New York City that often. That's why you saw that photo op talking about public safety, specifically in that case about the subways. The day she's taking photos in the subway, the day or the day after that person was burned to death in the subway. So, yeah, we're paying for it if she goes through Manhattan. Maybe the New York Queen needs to rethink her decree. Yeah, her decree to fight Trump, which she made that decree, really, if you think about it, the day after the election when her and Letitia James gave that press conference. Again, she wants to be a bigger political mover and shaker than she is because it fell on deaf ears, essentially, but it did send the message to Trump that New York doesn't want the federal government's help in any way, shape, or form. But if you think about it, too, when she said that if you vote Republican, you're anti-American, anti-women, and that to show you how little important she is at the national political scene, that didn't even make attention. And that was coming off the week of Biden calling Trump supporters garbage, and you had all that. So it should have been national news. Instead, it went by the wayside because she's just not that political mover. Continuing here from a different viewer, where is it? I'm out of order here. Oh, Mark writes in, I see local restaurants are feeding the corrections officers striking. I think that's awesome. Hats off to them. Yes, I saw that. Kudos to anyone providing. It sounds like a lot of food. It sounds like they're getting good meals out there. Well, they need it. It's been cold. It goes to show you how bad it must be in the prisons. We knew it was because of Hull, and we've talked about it on the air so often. But you know how bad it is when you're willing in this weather to go out and strike and say enough is enough. And how many people did we quote yesterday, and you've probably seen it since, who said they don't even care if they lose their job at this point. That speaks volumes. And finally, last comment for this section. I would recommend anyone call their representatives for county legislature and tell them to knock this off, the whole thing with Allard, or you'll never get my vote again. Thank you very much. Well, and that's interesting because a lot of the legislators, and we'll talk to Joe about this, but a lot of the legislators are up for re-election this November because it's a very heavy local year. And that's in reference to LEA out of Hornell reporting that the county is going to appeal the judge's decision in favor of Allard. We're going to try to get some more information for you on that when we talk to Allard on Tuesday, but also today with Joe Sempolinski and perhaps a little bit tomorrow with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. Okay. That's right. I went through all the comments. I think you'll just be interested to know this. Remember the other day as an update when Canada and America battled it out in hockey, and Canada, of course, booing the national anthem. And then the fight, what was it? The first 9 seconds of the fight, of the game, went into 3 separate fights. Well, I guess it's a rematch tonight. Team USA and Canada delivering the hockey showdown of the decade. The finale of the NHL's Four Nations Face-Off features a pair of rivals with rowdy recent history. So that is tonight. You can make your predictions, but I have a feeling I know who you're siding with on that one. So Trump is weighing the Doge dividend. Now, I'm going to ask this question to you yesterday, and I hope I'm right on this. I think it was Ken who said it, and I think it's a very good point that maybe we use the Doge money to pay down the national debt, and that we shouldn't be buying acceptance. My thought, differing a little bit from that, was people get that check and it's a tangible thing that they can hold in their hands and they see what can really be done when you cut the waste, fraud, and corruption. And I think it's not buying necessarily acceptance, but it's saying, wow, that we really do need to tighten our belts. That's why I like how Trump is now proposing it, because that was originally Musk's proposal. Trump is tweaking it a little bit, calling it a Doge dividend. So what he is considering is returning 20% of the savings. So not all the savings. That's why I think it's important. 20% of the savings from Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. Sending that to taxpayers, potentially putting thousands of dollars in the pockets of Americans struggling under recent record inflation. Trump said in Miami Beach, there's even under consideration a new concept where we give 20% of the Doge savings to American citizens and 20% goes to paying down debt. The numbers are incredible. Elon, so many billions, hundreds of billions, and we're thinking about giving 20% back to the American citizens. Trump floated the refund after Musk tweeted the suggestion out, and we mentioned that on the program yesterday. It's unclear precisely how much Doge has saved to date, but Musk has stated a goal of $1 trillion in annual cost cuts as his 100-person team blazes through the federal bureaucracy, effectively closing some agencies, mass firing employees at others, and canceling contracts deemed wasteful. Musk's initiative has halted operations at the $50 billion a year USAID Foreign Aid Agency and started the process of dismissing most of its 10,000 employees while beginning to dismantle the 1,700-person Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which has $712 million in funds whose fate is in limbo. So there you are. So again, paying down that, but also sending that 20% back to the taxpayers. Now, that's one of the new talking points in the media is that their numbers aren't accurate. And I saw that on a report this morning, that it's not really this much that they've cut. Or they had a typo on their website and it wasn't billions, it was millions. When we're talking about that much money, it's very easy to start accidentally saying million or saying billion instead of million. when you're talking those types of numbers. So what are your thoughts on a Doge dividend check, where 20% of all savings goes to the taxpayers? Now, right now, it's right around, I think, $55 billion is what they've said. But some news outlets who are not a fan of Doge are saying it was only $16 billion probably, or, throwing around these numbers as if they're credible anyway to believe. But I got to take a break. I just realized that. Because I got to catch up a little bit, because we want to have as much time with someone Joe Sempolinski when he joins us in the studio. So stay with us. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. All right, let's go to some viewer comments. If the governor continues to act tough against the president, a.k.a. the king, New York State will end up losing federal support. Then what? Will she make up for it by taxing us even more extravagantly? Yes, because look how much they're dependent. Her recent budget was dependent on federal monies. So you raise a good point. Yes, the answer will be they're not going to cut back. They are going to continue to spend, and we're just, the people that stay are going to have to make up the difference. And that's kind of what we're dealing with anyway at this point. Here we got some other comments. A couple of these I'm reading on the fly, so I hope everybody is being on their best behavior. Okay, 40%, 20 to the people, 20 to the debt. What happened to the other 60? I'm assuming, and that's in reference to the Doge dividend, I'm assuming that goes to the budget, to government spending, not just because 20% is paying down the debt. That's just straight paying down the debt. That's just my assumption. How about this? My fear with all this cutting is a rebound if Democrats ever get back in power. They will be on a spending spree of biblical proportions, turning the savings into dust. That is obviously a real fear. But if to the point of getting a Doge dividend, if people see that in their wallets, will that lead to support for Democrats? Or if Democrats do get in there, will that lead to a pushback on a spending spree? Wow, look at all these comments coming. Thanks, everybody. Okay, we've got a few other, I'll read one more comment and then I'll get to the rest of your comments, okay? After the next segment, because I do already have to take a short break because we got to play catch up so we have as much time with Joe Sempolinski as possible. So last comment for this section: send Republicans a check and send Democrats a participation trophy and a framed certificate showing how their check paid down the national debt. There you go. That's one thought. You better not send that to Musk. I could see that being a tweet, an X. Now, Trump and Musk have both emphasized the importance of full transparency in their Doge effort. You know what's better than saying, trust me? It's full transparency. So what we're doing with Doge is to just go to doge.gov. You can see every single action that's been taken. And I mention that because, first of all, I'd like to highlight the fact that, because I forgot, and it took a viewer to remind us, that doge.gov went online, I think it was on Valentine's Day. But it's nice to go and check the numbers every once in a while and just see what they're up to, for lack of a better word. But this is the new talking point from the media, this specifically from Bloomberg. Doge said it saved $55 billion. Data show much less. The federal cost-cutting effort, dubbed the Department of Government Efficiency, says it has saved $55 billion in federal spending so far. But its website only accounts for $16.6 billion of that. Well, there's a couple of reasons probably for that. The rollout on the website, instead of inundating everybody with all of the numbers, it could be that. But let's push that aside. Are we supposed to be upset that they've saved $16.6 billion of our tax-paying, hard-earned money? And that's before factoring in an error in the data published on Doge's website that mislabels a contract as $8 billion, which was later corrected in the federal database to only be $8 million. Boy, they said it was going to be $8 billion, but it was only $8 million. Oh, 8 million here, 8 million there. But I could see with the numbers they're dealing with how easy it would be. Look how many times on the program I'll get tongue twisted and say billion when I mean million, or vice versa. Because you're talking proving Elon Musk's point and Donald Trump's point that there's too much spending going on when you're looking at these numbers all day and you accidentally say billion when you meant million. But I'll take the 8 million in savings, only 8 million. That cuts nearly in half the total of Doge's itemized savings, including from contracts and leases, to about 8.6 billion. Elon Musk, President Donald Trump's close ally, has pledged that the cost-cutting enterprise would provide maximum transparency and that all of our actions are fully public. But Doge's accounting raises questions about the reliability of their self-reporting and their level of accountability. I just don't, it's just like with the congestion pricing when it comes to Governor Hochul. I don't see how it's a winning issue. I don't see when the media and Democrat politicians come in and defend the exorbitant spending that Washington does. Because how many of these times have you heard the number? Never mind what they're saving. But when you've seen the numbers that they're talking about and you go, why is this? USAID, how many of us even knew much about USAID? And then you see their budget, or you see the budgets of some of these other organizations they're looking at, and then they even try to scare you in the media and certain Democrat politicians saying, oh no, Doge has entered the IRS. I didn't know the IRS was an institution that the American people loved. It just seems to be that many are on the wrong side, in my opinion, of a battle for the American people's hearts and minds. But we're going to read your comments when we come back. We're having fun already, and Joe hasn't even joined us, so stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back. Broadcasting live and proudly from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Let's go to some viewer comments. I'm afraid I've been out of the loop for a while, and I'm appalled to hear of the appeal regarding Sheriff Allard. This is disturbing to me. They never give up, and we need to support this somehow. Give, send, go. We'll get you all the information on that when we get more details. If you're just joining us, LEA out of Hornell is reporting Steuben County is going to appeal the judge's decision that found in favor of Sheriff Allard. We will have Allard on the program Tuesday. We're going to try to get some information from Joe Sempolinski, but Joe is state office, obviously he's assemblyman, but he may just have some information that he's heard. So we'll see what we can get from him. Mark writes in, I don't denounce what Doge is doing, but I think they better set some of that money they are saving on unemployment, as it will rise dramatically as they terminate positions. That is a very fair point, Mark. And that's what's interesting about this. And this is why so many people, you can say on the left, are so upset about it, because it's in the early stages. So we're learning exactly what's being done. It is transparent in that sense, but we're learning about the savings. We're learning about exactly how this is all going to work. So I think you raise a very fair point, Mark. Good morning, Frankly Speaking. Well, hey, good morning to you too. Just a quick text to let you know that we appreciate your show. We appreciate Fox and your sponsors. And I just want to say a big thank you to all of you. Well, thank you very much. That's so nice. As a matter of fact, I like that text so much, I'm going to save it and read it. Let's not tell Joe that I've already read that one. And I'm going to wait and read that when Joe comes on and act like it's the first time we've heard it, okay? Deal between us. Comment from a different viewer. Term number 3 for Trump. He can buy votes too. Oh, no, a lot of people just got upset at you. Okay, there's a question I'll pose. Do you think Trump is going to run for a third term? I personally don't, but crazier things have happened. Now you're saying, well, he can't constitutionally. I know they're trying. There is a Republican representative trying to change that rule. And Trump, in his Trumpian fashion, has played it coy, to put it lightly, and tried to kind of pique the interest of everyone by not, as a matter of fact, just recently, not fully endorsing J.D. Vance running for president next time, because we'll just wait and see type thing. Interesting. Comment from a different viewer. Maybe Hochul should look at the exodus of businesses that are leaving the state and those that will not come because of the Queen. Yes, that's not where her fighting attitude is. And you raise a perfect point. She's willing to fight over congestion pricing, but not public safety. She's willing to fight illegal work stoppages, but not support the corrections officers. She doesn't have the fight in her to try to save businesses, because look at the Climate Change Superfund. going to a business that already had followed all the rules, that it followed every rule that New York put in front of them, did so, was successful, and then 10 years later, Hochul says, yeah, we don't like those rules anymore. Give us billions upon billions upon billions. So what do you say for your business? Well, what if I'm the next fad that people don't like? I'm the fad that I'm bad, I'm destroying the earth, or I'm hurting people. I don't want to have to pay billions of dollars. I'm not even going to look at New York State. So you're exactly right. I wish she had that fight for the business climate that she has against Trump. Comment from a different viewer. And this is what I love about this program, because we get so many different sides. Sorry, there is no proof of how much money they claim they found, meaning Doge. You can write whatever you want. Please show the hard proof. Thank you. And I can't speak for Musk or Trump. I do believe those. I understand what you're saying on the website. It gives the numbers, but they could write anything they want. I think with the, for lack of a better word, auditing, and when you start to look at the budgets, you will see those numbers in kind of hard form, hard proof. And that's what I'm saying about kind of the nature of this being the quickness of it all. All right, we've got other comments coming in. Like I said, I'm just going to take one more break because I do want to. Oh, actually, let me talk about this story first, and then we're going to read the rest of your comments. Trump faces growing Republican revolt on Capitol Hill over awful Doge cuts. So I started saying, man, I know there's been some hitches in all this. There's been a couple of times where they've had to go back in and say, never mind, you're not fired. Or, you know, they're moving quickly. And you can love that. You can hate that. That's what this community forum is all about. And that's why I love hearing from you. But I started thinking, who is the Republican? Or who are the Republicans? I mean, is there a revolt by Republicans? Is this going to be one of those scenarios where nothing's going to be done because there's such a slim majority? Well, let me answer here. Because it was Axios that reported it. And who do we hear from? Who is the Republican revolt beginning with? Susan Collins from Maine told Axios that the administration is moving too fast. She warned Elon Musk's team should wait until agency heads are confirmed and can take a more surgical approach. She said some recent actions violate restrictions that are in current law, and the team is making mistakes, referencing the accidental firing of officials working on bird flu. Don Bacon said before making cuts rashly, the administration should be studying and staffing to see what the consequences are. Measure twice before cutting. They've had to backtrack multiple times. But that's interesting, staffing. Hire some more staff so we could cut some more waste. Anyway, that could be a revolt on its way. Keep those comments coming in. We're having a blast this morning. I think I can speak for all of us. As I said, Joe Sempolinski going to be joining us here in just a moment. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. The comments are pouring in as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. A couple of them I'm going to save for Joe coming on the program. So I'm not going to get to all of them, but don't take that personally. Comment from a viewer. Frank, I'm okay with the Doge payments, but I would be selective who I pay it to. We have too many people receiving huge tax returns but not paying in. This de-incentivizes people from working and trying to advance in life. Thank you very much. And there's going to be a lot of discussion about the Doge dividends, as Trump calls it. And if you're just joining us, that's where 20% will potentially go back to taxpayers. Okay. Trump should be given a third term. That was a question that we posed earlier. Oops, I think there's more there and I deleted it. I'll try to get back to that. Comment from a different viewer. There's no one do. Oh, there is. Okay, Trump should be given a third term. Only a fool would believe he lost in 2020. Thank you very much. Comment from a different viewer. Show the proof and receipts is the new mantra, and it's already getting old. How about let's be grateful that we have a president who is doing his job and thinking about the people for a change. I do think we should be putting it toward paying down the debt first, in my opinion. Very good point. Yeah, I will say, to your point, show the receipts is becoming so cliche, or the term we have the receipts, which has been used in Washington for a while. Let's go to the receipts and then they'll show. I'm with you. I don't think that's exactly how you were saying that, but that, in my opinion, has gotten old, just those comments. But yes, that is the new media kind of mantra. All of a sudden, they want transparency. Think of that. Think of that to the last 4 years under Biden, and now they demand transparency. Pretty interesting. Wow, look at all these waves and comments. Everybody's up and at 'em this morning. Thank you very much. Oh, here's something interesting. What's today? Wear blue this Friday in support of the New York State Corrections officers. Okay, thank you. Is that a big push being made? We'll have to remember. I don't know if I have any blue, but I'll try to remember that. Thank you. Okay, as I mentioned, a couple of years I saved for when Joe's on the program. Trump signs an executive order ending the use of taxpayer money to incentivize or support illegal immigration. This came in late last night. President Donald Trump signed an executive order late Wednesday night. As he does, the news cycle is all over the place. And it's interesting. I'm not saying in a negative way. Ending the use of taxpayer money for federal resources supporting illegal immigration and illegal aliens. The Trump administration said the goal of the executive order is to ensure taxpayer resources are used to protect the interests of American citizens, not illegal aliens. Under the order, federal departments and agencies must identify and end all federally funded programs providing financial benefits to illegal aliens. It also aims to ensure federal funds are not being used to support sanctuary policies. So there you are. There's an update. But we got to take a break because I see the assemblyman coming into the studio. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. And we are back. That is the Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, and in that studio, we have Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. And we always usually do this in the 7 o'clock hour, and this is the first time in a long time where I've walked into the studio, the palatial studio here on Market Street, where it's light. You know, usually it's at the end of the interview, so that's a sign
we're getting there.
You know, despite what the groundhog said, maybe spring is around the corner.
That's right. Now, I want to read some comments here, Joe, but we've been talking about on the program how unique you are as a guest because former congressman, assemblyman, and the chairman of the Steuben County Republican Committee, so we can ask you federal, state, and local questions.
This is a one-stop shop.
It really is.
You know, if you got a question, I'll try and answer it on all sorts of topics. I may not know what I'm talking about on some other things, but we'll give it a shot. You know?
All right, let's go to some comments. Crazy, we now have a president that shows up for work and stays awake, and people are mad. Well, and not just shows up to work.
He's been very vigorous.
Yes, for sure. Okay, I think they should audit the debt. A lot of it could be canceled or renegotiated, just like a home loan. Thank you for that. Now, here's some of the other ones that I saved. Good morning, Frankly Speaking. Good morning. Just a quick text to let you know that we appreciate your show.
That's
nice. We
nice.
Appreciate Fox and your sponsors, and I just want to say a big thank you to all of you.
Big Fox and the sponsors, giving real talk to the people.
That's right.
Wonderful thing.
Another comment. Good morning, Frank. Question: do you think Letitia James will be the next governor of New York? I'm going to let Joe answer that.
Oh, that's an interesting one because that's a very interesting question because she ran for governor very briefly last time. So she
almost forgettably.
Yeah, she got in the race and then backed off really quickly because, as people will probably remember, there was a previous governor, Mr. Cuomo,
soon to be mayor,
now wants to run for mayor, and. You know, she takes over due to his resignation. She had not been elected governor. She'd been elected lieutenant governor, and having not been elected governor, she took over. And so there was a lot of questions, especially remembering that the Democratic Party in New York State is disproportionately downstate. You know, they have a higher proportion of the voters downstate. Would an upstate Democrat be able to be nominated?
Right.
And so Letitia James gets in the race, and everybody was anticipating this sort of epic clash between a sitting but unelected governor and the attorney general, and then it sort of fizzled out really quickly. So we know that Letitia James harbors gubernatorial ambitions. We know that for a fact because she's run, albeit briefly, for governor. This time, she hasn't been making quite as many overt moves.
No.
But do I think Kathy Hochul is going to skate through without having a primary. I seriously doubt that. Do I think she's a lock to be the nominee for governor next year? I seriously doubt that. Sort of the sharks are circling because they smell blood.
Richie Torres has
been
Mr. Public Safety.
Yeah, and her own lieutenant governor.
Oh yeah.
And so, then who's her running mate if he's, on the outs, and does he then jump in the gubernatorial race if she drops him from the ticket? And so I think there's going to be a lot of dynamics over the next year. So we're almost exactly 1 year out from the Democrat state convention. Mm-hmm. So over the next year, everything's going to be a lot of twists and turns. Do I, at this moment, think that Letitia James will be one of the ones to run for governor? Probably not. But would I be surprised or shocked if I picked up the newspaper tomorrow and suddenly she was running for governor? I would neither be surprised nor shocked. No. So I think there's going to be a lot of drama, especially on the Democratic side of the ledger for the statewide offices going into 2026.
Here's another comment. Anxious to hear from Joe Sempolinski this morning, and you every morning goes without saying. Well, thank you. All these nice compliments. Only when you're on here. Normally, it's all insulting for me.
That's right. We haven't had a heckler in a while.
Yeah, that's right. Whoa. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning, fellow American patriots. Well, good morning to you.
That's right.
Question.
USA.
Yeah, that's right. Question. Do you and Joe think that Trump effect has actually created a third political party? If so, what should it be called? Well, this is kind of the idea with RFK, Tulsi.
I think we have not seen a third political party, but I do think we have seen a political realignment.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And that has taken place probably over the last 10 to 15 years or so. A lot of it has to do with President Trump, but I think there are sort of underlying currents that led to
kind of like the Tea Party
success. I think that, exactly. That's where I started going. As the Tea Party was sort of a proto first version of the Trumpism sort of movement. So I think you have different elements that there are some folks that started out Republican, they're still Republican. There's some folks started out Democrat, still Democrat, and that's probably the majority of both parties. But you're definitely seeing, and it has accelerated certainly over the last several years, people that would have never considered voting Republican now voting Republican. You have a Kennedy who is serving in the cabinet of a Republican.
Are you shocked he didn't get one Democrat vote in the Senate? Just out of knee-jerk reaction, you would have thought a Democrat would have said Kennedy.
I'm a little surprised with that, just given the Kennedy, sort of
legacy.
Name. Yeah. But it sort of shows that realignment. So you have folks that were sort of the country club Republicans, that are really, most of them are now Democrats, and you have sort of the sort of blue collar voters that were maybe not culturally super progressive or liberal, that were voting Democrat, sort of going back to maybe FDR even, and a lot of them are voting Republican. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's obviously been a net gain for the Republicans, because there's just a lot more of the folks they're getting than the folks they are losing. You see that in election results. And it's a whole new world of possibilities. In New York State, what this leads to is there are votes in New York City that Republicans had never been able to even consider getting. Now people are at least thinking about it. We picked up several seats in New York City in the state assembly not in 2024, but in 2022, and then we held all those seats in 2024. They weren't sort of fluke one-time Zeldin rides high sort of thing. So there's I don't think there's been a third political party. I think there has been a pretty dynamic realignment of the two existing political parties, and we're seeing how that plays out. It's an exciting time to be in politics, and again, there's a lot more possibilities when you have these dynamics, and you're seeing it in the appointments that the president is making.
Well, and think to your point about the inroads that Trump made in New York City, which were really shocking for Republicans, and then he sticks up, goes against, is probably a better way, of congestion pricing. And yet Governor Hochul finally gets a backbone on something, not on public safety, not on corrections officers. There's two things.
She's all fired up.
She's fired up. So there's two things we talked about this morning. She's fired up again to keep congestion pricing, a tax on everybody for $9.
Which she delayed in the first place. She was for it and against it.
Because it's not popular.
Yeah. Well, it's very unpopular, especially in the suburbs.
Yeah, and she's all of a sudden very tough against illegal work stoppages.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden she doesn't think a strike is a good idea.
She's all over the place, and So what was interesting with congestion pricing, I saw a statement from the governor of New Jersey,
Yeah.
who is a Democrat,
Yeah.
thanking President Trump for stopping congestion pricing.
Yeah.
And if there, the governor is making arguments about the president's authority and what have you. Remember, this is something that does affect New Jersey just as much as it affects New York. So there is a federal component to it. The Biden administration had signed off on it, and so this is, to my legal understanding, sort of reneging that sign off.
Sure.
This is for people that are regular folks that just need to get into Manhattan for work. This was very burdensome, and this is a money grab that the
And it's got to win Trump some votes in the city.
I would think, especially, I think it wins him votes in Long Island and Westchester County.
And when I say him, I mean the Republican Party in
Yeah,
general.
yeah. Well, no, right.
Because there is no third term. We've had this conversation this morning.
Yeah. Oh, is that come up? Right. Yeah. Well, I think actually that's an interesting political dynamic that I think you're seeing, sort of play out in the first part of the Trump administration. Trump is never going to be on the ballot himself. Is never going to be on the ballot again. Certainly, his policies will be on the ballot in the midterm and in the next presidential election. It'll be referendums on what he does, but he himself is never going to be on the ballot again. So he's sort of freed to do what he feels he needs to do. In this particular case, the city, not so much because of the city, a lot of the folks are taking the subways already. But if there's a very edge of the city, certainly Staten Island usually takes the ferry or whatever. But if you're in Nassau or Suffolk County, this is a very big deal.
Yeah.
If you are in Westchester or Rockland County, very big deal. And frankly, if you're in northern New Jersey, it's a very big deal. And remember, they've got their political situation on a different calendar where their governor comes up in the odd year. And so there's a lot of interesting dynamics throughout the metropolitan region. What really I thought was sort of offensive was the governor, when she put in congestion pricing, after she paused it, and she's gone back and forth on this. After she put it in, she said it was a cut. Because if you remember, it was originally supposed to be higher. Yeah. And then what she put in was less than what the original proposal was. So but it was going from zero.
It went from zero.
There was no congestion fee.
Yep.
And now there is a congestion fee.
So how's that a cut?
So that's an infinite increase, right? From zero to anything is an infinite increase for our math aficionados out there. And then she claims it's a cut because at some point prior in the proposal, it was proposed to be more. That's how goofy and silly and out to lunch Kathy Hochul is.
Really. We talk about it a lot, and I hate kind of the term, but they're not ready for prime time. She wants to be.
Really not.
She's not. She wants to be popular like Cuomo was at one point.
Yeah.
She wants to be a political power broker. She's none of those things. I mean, Pelosi specifically blamed her for the midterm election losses. That's not a place you want to be. And then you look at her DNC speech where she flubs it right off the jump.
Yeah, she's sort of got this, I have to say I'm really tough all the time. And she's just been on almost every issue. She's been on both sides of it, especially these sort of controversial downstate issues. I think that's she is somebody whose political skill set is wanting.
Yeah. I mention on the show sometimes when you go to like a political function and you see the difference in levels of politicians sometimes when just giving a speech. There's a scenario where I think she really fell into the governors and maybe would have never been to that level in a normal circumstance. But
I think that's true.
A comment from a viewer, Frank, it isn't April Fool's Day yet. Tish James for governor? Really? Hey, we're just having the conversation here. Joe's thoughts on Cuomo running for mayor after he killed thousands of New York senior citizens.
All right, here's my thoughts on Cuomo running for mayor.
Do I have to be?
I don't have a vote.
Okay.
I don't live in New York City.
Yeah.
There are about 8 million people in New York City, right?
Yeah.
Please, people in New York City, of the 8 million residents, elect literally anyone other than Andrew Cuomo.
Yes.
That's my position. Andrew Cuomo.
Simple as that.
Mayor. And
well, did you hear the news this morning? Save the date, March 4th. He was asking you to block off your schedule for the port and
fundraiser or something.
Or some type
so I think he's doing it. The polls show he's leading.
No
so I don't think he has the ability to walk away from that just psychologically. If you remember, he spent millions of dollars out of his fund that he still has from his gubernatorial fund, sort of testing the waters for governor last time. And I'm guessing the polling didn't come along statewide. So if he was willing to spend millions of dollars to sort of prime the pump for governor, if he's already leading the polls for mayor, I don't see how he walks away from that.
No, because then he says a few years in there, if he does do some decent things, maybe he's moving right back to government. He's not stopping.
I mean, the guy's a psycho.
Yeah.
So,
but you know, it's exciting.
Literally anyone other than Andrew Cuomo.
We live in exciting times where I could ask you on this show right now, what do you think about Cuomo running for mayor and Anthony Weiner making a comeback for city council?
Isn't he want to run for city council?
He's running for city council.
I think he is running for city council. He's like an announced candidate. So.
It's like, I don't know. On that note, let's take a break. I don't know if I like where this is going. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back in the Hesselson studio, broadcasting live with the Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski, former congressman, current Steuben County Republican Committee chairman. So you can ask him anything. Keep the questions coming in. Here's one, just a simple one. Amen, Joe. Say no to Cuomo.
There you go.
See, you got people.
That was Eric Adams is watching the show. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks, Mayor. That's funny. You know what's interesting? You're talking about Hochul kind of always seeming to flip flop on things, and that leads into one that I know you should, and I know you are very passionate about, and that was when she started to suggest that the congressional district, the 21st congressional district, was going to be delayed, and not even till primaries. They started talking about it in.
I was very fired up about this one. I viewed it, just everything that I've been about in public life. It's a weird thing I'm 42 now, but at the age of 39 to know what the first line of your obituary is going to be.
Yeah.
And I knew because it was going to be served in Congress for 112 days. And some people may think that's silly. Some people may think I took it very seriously. I felt it was sacred. And so those votes I cast on behalf of the folks that are listening, really meant something to me and to do that job. So I take it very seriously, the idea of holding a seat open for months and months on end. I think it's an affront to a constitutional republic. I think it's an affront to our system of government. And so what Frank's referring to is Congresswoman Stefanik has been nominated to serve as the ambassador to the UN. She's expected to be confirmed. The timing is a little unclear just because
because of this a little bit.
Well, some of this, and then there's 2 seats in Florida where there's been vacancies, and they're sort of waiting for them to fill maybe. Under current state law, the governor has 10 days to declare a vacancy and then has 70 to 80 days from that point to call an election. So if you do the math, she has to call from a vacancy as little as 70, as much as 90 days. Okay. That was a reform that was put in place, about 5-6 years ago. Very bipartisan across the board within the legislature. Reform because of abuses by Andrew Cuomo, who was holding seats open indefinitely, especially in the state legislature, and abuses by Governor Patterson. You may recall Governor Patterson held what was then the 29th congressional district, Southern Tier and Finger Lakes, open when Eric Massa resigned in March, held that all the way open until November.
That's right.
I know because I was the campaign manager for the Republican nominee, and we had to sue to try and even force him to call it in November. So the reform was put in place because of these abuses. And then there started to be rumors in Albany that the Democrats were going to try and change that to hold the North Country congressional seat open longer. The initial rumor was hold it until the June primary,
which was bad.
Which was bad. I was against that.
But you could see them making a PR move on it, saying
save money or whatever.
Which
I came out aggressively against that rumor at the time. When the bill dropped, it was not hold it open until June. It was hold it open all the way until November if the governor wanted.
Yeah.
So one, you're potentially holding a seat open into November, and the way it worked, if with certain vacancies, it wouldn't have been the case with Stefanik's vacancy, but you could have had a scenario under that proposal law where a seat was held open for 14 months if something happened just prior to a previous general election. So that was bad enough. But then also the governor, under this proposed law, had an option to either go with the old system or hold it open till November. So clearly what's going to happen is in a Republican seat, the governor would have held it open until November, and in a Democratic seat, she would have called the election in 70 days.
Yeah.
So
it's politics at its worst.
I was apoplectic. So was every Republican in Albany. So was every Republican in Washington.
Right.
And frankly, and I was glad to see this, broad chunks of the mainstream media, even the liberal mainstream media, was attacking this. So we aggressively Daily News went after it. So we aggressively pushed back, and at the very, very last minute, they pulled the bill. They had already introduced the legislation. They had already put it on the agenda for the election law committee. From a procedural standpoint, this was all about to happen within the next hour, where they would have held a committee meeting to move it to the floor of the Assembly. Senate was going through their procedures. So with a concerted across-the-board effort from the Republican Party, especially the Republican office holders in Albany, we got a huge win. It has been pulled at the moment. We're staying vigilant to make sure it doesn't come out. But it was a very, very big win for, obviously, the Republican side in Albany. But more importantly, it was a very, very big win for the principles on which this country was founded. And I couldn't imagine something more offensive to everything that I've based my life on than just leaving 750,000 people without representation in the national legislature just because you don't like how you think they're going to vote. I couldn't have been more angry about it, and I couldn't have been more pleased that we were able to push back and get, a huge win in Albany just a couple weeks ago.
And I think it shows potential for real troubles in the future that Hakeem Jeffries was so supportive of it and pushing so hard behind the scenes.
Yes.
Because what does that say about his kind of quest for power? If you
right. Yeah, if he's willing to do this.
Yeah.
And the minority leader of the federal House is a former member of the New York State Assembly.
Yeah.
Prior to being a congressman, he was a New York State Assemblyman. So he has ties to Albany, and that, I'm assuming that around him is where the brainchild of this came from.
It doesn't seem like a Hochul decision by herself.
Well, what's interesting is the majority leader of the Senate was saying this was the governor's idea, and the governor was saying it was the legislature's idea. So as soon as the whole thing
that's when it got embarrassing.
Blew up.
Yeah, back and forth.
And there's been, if you listen to the governor, which I wouldn't, but if you listen to the governor, she's tried to spin this as, this was a negotiation. She's doing the art of the deal or whatever. I think that's complete baloney because you don't let it get to the absolute last minute and then pull it back.
That or Trump really called your bluff and embarrassed you even more.
They made them. They came across as very weak. So we're staying vigilant. The bill has been pulled at the moment, but if it rears its head again, we will again push back heavily. And again, this was a huge win for our system of government, that the current bipartisan reform that we've had in place for the last few years is still the law of the state of New York.
We've got, I'm going to take a break because I got a couple of comments from viewers and I got a couple other questions. We might jump around. It might go from state to federal to all over the place, okay?
That's what I'm here for.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, and in that studio, someone than Joe Sempolinski, also former congressman and chairman of the Steuben County Republican Committee. Joe, what are you going to do with your Doge check?
My Doge check? Do you have to invest it in Dogecoin?
Is that how
or does you receive it in Dogecoin?
That'd be a good idea.
I mean, I'll say this. What I have been very pleased to see is there's a lot of silly stuff that the federal government spends money on. And the fact that a lot of these things have been sort of coming to the popular consciousness, I mean, it's something that if people in Washington certainly knew there was goofy programs that were money was going out to. And it was the sort of thing that once you sort of talk about it in public, everybody goes, really? We're in this much debt?
Yeah.
We're in this much deficit,
we're spending
it on the X, Y, and Z. Really? Yeah. So the fact that conversation has moved from just sort of this arcane sort of within conservatives in Washington conversation to the popular consciousness, I think is a positive thing for our political system.
I think it's a winning side too. Did you see Stephen Miller? I can't remember who the host was. They're doing an interview, and he goes, "You've got to agree that there's waste and fraud." And she goes, "Yeah." Then why? And then he goes, "Why are you not celebrating these cuts then?"
Right.
I just think it's hard to. The article we had this morning is it's not 88 billion; it's only 16 billion. You're like, okay, well, we'll take the 16 billion.
Right. And I think where some of that commentary comes from is we have a lot further to go. I'm not certainly against pointing out waste and fraud, but that's step one.
Yes.
So when it's used to sort of say, don't do it, don't go find this stuff, that's problematic. If it's sort of, all right, we found this, what's next, what's next, that's a little bit different. So, but yeah, I remember when I worked as a congressional staffer, we had some of these commentaries back when the Tea Party wave in 2010, where we were pointing out some really absurd things that we were spending money on.
And the debt clock and the
right. Yeah. And at that point, it was President Obama. Yeah. And so he was sort of not willing to look into these things and get rid of spending. But what you're seeing, some of the reaction is every penny that is spent by any government, and this is one of the real problems toward reform and things that conservatives run into a lot, is the most important penny to the person that gets that penny.
Well, yeah.
And so when they think they're going to lose it, they flip out. And even though maybe it's this arcane, silly thing that really shouldn't be spending money on, to that person, that's their livelihood. So you have to have the ability to sort of cut through that noise. And I think some of what you're saying, as we discussed, you have a term-limited president who doesn't, is not susceptible to some of these pressures of special interests.
Right.
And is able to take a broader look. And also Elon Musk, one of the positives of Elon Musk being the one sort of leading this sort of search for silliness, is he's also not as susceptible to it because he's sort of this outside audit. That was sort of the idea of this, is somebody that is coming from the business world who's just going to look very objectively.
And he can't be influenced money-wise, too.
Right, he's the richest man on the planet.
So a lobbyist coming to him
and say,
absolutely
I'll donate $1,000 to your campaign. That doesn't work on the richest man in the world who's not, running for anything.
Right.
And is just doing this because he wants to, there's some things I greatly admire about Elon Musk. The foremost one, aside from
dancing ability.
Well, no, maybe not so much, but his stance on free speech.
Yes.
And just imagine the world if he had not purchased Twitter. Now X, where you had this, just really oppressive censorship of people that were saying things that we sort of now know to be true. There's a really good chance that COVID did come from a lab in China. If you said that on Twitter,
right,
then you're getting canceled. And good on Vice President Vance,
right,
for what he said in Munich to the Europeans about
that was a
free speech and about religious freedom.
Someone called it Churchillian, which is
I think
there's something to that.
They have, and you had 60 Minutes later that day, sort of almost presenting it in a positive light.
Yeah, people were shocked to hear what has happened to quote unquote free speech.
Right.
Yeah,
and in societies that claim to be free societies, and you're talking about. You post an insulting meme in Germany, they come knock your door down. Right. You pray silently outside of an abortion clinic in the United Kingdom, and you get fined and arrested. This is really not something that is part of a free society. So I was greatly impressed by those particular comments by the vice president going into the heart of Europe and saying, wait a minute, you really need to take a look at yourself as to how you're conducting yourself with free speech. And we as United States, this is going to be a priority as to how our relationship goes forward. If this is how you're going to treat your people, that's going to affect our relationship. Good on you,
and it was
Vice
nice
President.
Not to be a state dinner. Not one of these, everybody pats each other on the back. He went out there with a purpose, just like Trump is doing now. And I think that's a really refreshing part of this administration, just like when you mentioned with Musk. And I do think it's interesting what they're trying to accomplish, but I can already see, and we've seen it already with the PR, look, every little thing that happens is going to be because of this Doge cop, right? We have a plane crash in Canada, and somehow that's Trump's fault, and Chuck Schumer's pushing it. So you can everybody
I saw that Pete Buttigieg was commenting on the plane crash, and I saw somebody was like, "Oh, you suddenly care about transportation?"
when did that happen? But I think as conservatives and Republicans, we need to understand that that's going to get very annoying. But that's what's coming. So
that's right.
Trump knows it. Musk knows it.
And again, the next steps are, what are we going to do with the budget? That's they're figuring out through the House and Senate now the budget resolution. I used to serve on the House Budget Committee, and then the appropriations to follow. Our debt is an existential crisis, and we need to be taking aggressive steps through the budget and appropriations process to get that in line. And there are going to be people that are unhappy because their thing got cut.
Yeah, their bridge. Or, it's always these little.
And I get that.
Yeah.
But we cannot continue to operate at the debt levels that we are operating. It is unsustainable levels of spending, and something has to be done. And I would encourage the folks in Washington to be aggressive going forward and really bend that debt curve. Otherwise, there's not going to be a country to save.
No, and now's the time to do it. The
Now's the
momentum,
time to do it.
and you've got the man
right.
who's got the
now
backbone.
you've got the time to do it, where you got a guy that's fired up to do it in the White House and who is not as susceptible to the normal political pressures for a variety of reasons.
Yes. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Joe Sempolinski in that studio. All right, Joe, here is a comment from Ken in Horseheads. Ken writes in quite frequently. We appreciate it. I'm obviously just a common man and not a political analyst, but I do believe I have common sense. As I commented yesterday, personalizing the decisions and actions of an individual, especially individuals like Biden and Hochul, who we know are puppets for the Democrat leadership, only serve to hurt that person. To educate the electorate on the downsides of electing Democrats in general, we should be painting the whole party with the actions of the individual. What do you think?
So, I mean, there's something to be said there where politics is by definition a team sport.
Yeah.
Right. At least politics in a democratic republic is a team sport. You don't have any sort of decisions that are made just by one individual that then take effect. So we have bad laws in New York State. Perfect example is the HALT Act in the prisons.
Yep.
People are fired up.
Rightfully so. We've been getting a lot of photos.
And I've been outspoken against the HALT Act for years. And people are mad at Governor Hochul. Okay.
Yeah.
And they should be. Hochul stinks. But these bad laws, whatever they might be in whatever arena, they're passed through the legislature.
Yeah.
So you have to have 76, assembly members. In my chamber, you got to have a majority of the Senate. You can't do it on your own. And so with Hochul in particular, going back to some of our previous segments, since she sort of fell into the office due to Cuomo being Cuomo, there's a real question of how much control does she really have over the Democrat establishment? How much is she calling the shots? How much is being sort of told to her or whatever? Now, the Democratic Party in the state of New York doesn't let me into their sort of backroom machinations, so I don't know exactly who is whispering in the governor's ear. I know there's a little bit of a disconnect between Hochul people and Cuomo people.
Oh yeah.
And they don't get along. So the same people that are sort of around Cuomo are not necessarily the same people that are around Hochul. So that would be the one sort of asterisk I would put on the comment is there is a perception, I'm sure the Democrats perceive the Republicans this way as well, but there's a perception of the party you're not a part of to be viewed sort of as this monolith.
Right.
Like, they're the other team and they're all marching in step or whatever. There are divisions and intrigue and internal problems within the Democratic Party in New York and nationally, just as much as there's divisions and intrigue within the Republican Party. That's just people and that's just politics. So the idea that there's some exacting machine, I think there's some degree of that, but there are certainly divides and divisions behind the scenes within the Democrats. But the overall comment that perhaps Hochul is not the one coming up with all these ideas and calling all the shots, I think is 100% true.
And to his point, I think with Biden, they're using him as a scapegoat for a lot of this, when it was really the Pelosi's of the world that were creating a lot of this.
Biden's no longer needed.
Yeah.
So that's easy for them to sort of blame something on him.
Think about that. You're dedicated 50-plus years of your life. I don't want to relitigate this, but 50 years, and to go out like that, your own party.
Who?
Yeah, I know. Man, I mean, Pelosi.
Actually, the Biden was president on the morning of January 20th.
Yeah.
We're not to the end of February.
It's February 20th.
Right. Well, is exactly? Well,
it's exactly.
So we're 30 days, or I guess 31 days with January, and it feels like that was a previous lifetime.
It really does.
And I think that is just showing just how active the Trump administration.
It is.
President Trump himself, Vice President Vance, Elon Musk, everybody involved, how active they've been. I will say this. The Senate confirmations have been a lot smoother than anybody
Did you
anticipated.
expect RFK Jr. to get it?
Not as I figured he would get it,
'cause the numbers,
but it would be more hiccups along the way. So the Senate Republicans have managed that process in a way that I think should be pointed out, and it has been much smoother than I think anybody anticipated at the beginning of the Trump administration.
Yeah, and we talk about it on the show, but even like last night, he cuts funding using taxpayers' monies to incentivize or support illegal immigration. That happened late last night.
Right.
So people tuning in at 6 o'clock this morning didn't even know this happened.
Right.
Trump's news cycle is
His
amazing.
news cycle is greatly accelerated.
Yes.
His news cycle, you say, a 24-hour news cycle was fast or whatever, a 48-hour news cycle. His is like a 3-hour news cycle. So in the last segment, I talked about Vance's speech in Munich and how I applauded him for standing for free speech and religious freedom. I was working. I have a job. So that was, I guess, in the morning as far as American time, because he was in Europe. And I didn't see it till the end of the day. And I sent it to some of my friends on a group text.
Old news.
That's what they said. It was like, man, that was 3 news cycles ago. I'm like, that was 8 hours ago.
I don't, because I used to, when a show was over, you'd kind of throughout the day check and maybe, this is a good article, I'll print this for tomorrow. You can't do that now.
You might have something during the show now. We get to the end of the show, it might be, what we said at the beginning of the show might not be relevant anymore.
Someone made a good point yesterday. The DOJ is suing New York State, and that made it in the news for about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, I almost forgot it when you said it.
So things are turning over
and
very fast.
The weekends are what's crazy, because normally you'll see journalists, quote unquote journalists, start to complain about this because they did the first term,
right?
Where at least they had the weekends off under most presidents, because Friday was the worst day to dump a press release.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Now I'll wake up and Saturday's news is old on Sunday, and then Monday I feels like I'm cramming for a test.
I am sympathetic because I not to the journalists.
Yeah, don't be sympathetic.
I'm sympathetic to the president. Because I was, when I was in Congress, I had 112 days.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, I'm going to use these 112 days as best we can. And Donald Trump, again, he's term limited. Yeah. So he has 4 years. Mm-hmm. And I think he's looking at it, I have 4 years. And also remember, as a president, the closer you get to the end of that second term, the more your influence diminishes. So if he's going to accomplish big things, it's now.
It's now.
Right now.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the president's
has
attitude and awareness.
And he has that energy to do that too.
Yeah.
He has that drive.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, every day I don't know how I got on it, Joe, but I'm on the press releases from him. Not the press releases, but like his actual daily schedule press releases, like the most tedious of things.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's always
he has impressive energy level.
I don't know how he does it.
Yeah.
I get tired. Like you watch him in the morning, and then he's at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. We're going to be signing executive orders all night.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is
he's go, and I think it's coming from that. He knows this is the time where he's going to have the most influence he's ever had.
Yep.
And he's trying to make the most of it.
Yep. A couple comments here. Mark writes in, I agree with Joe, 100% no mo Cuomo. That's tough to say.
Go. No mo Cuomo.
Good morning, Frank and Joe. Well, good morning. Don't forget about your viewer comment last hour who suffered from TDS and thinks that the waste being found are imaginary numbers being created with no proof whatsoever. There's still a lot of that sort out there. I'm shocked that they are watching. I'm not shocked that they're watching. Everybody loves Frank.
Well, everybody should be watching because they might learn something. But these things that people are finding, I mean, you can go to like that. Well, you can go to Doge, or you can go to that department's website and say, "All right, what are you giving grants to?" And you can look for yourself. Yep. This silliness has been going on for a long time, and it is a positive aspect of Doge that we are now talking about it beyond just the corridors of Washington, D.C.
I know we've got other comments coming in. Make sure you get those questions in because we are wrapping up on time. We have another break we have to take here in just a moment. But I mean, we could get back to Doge if you want. But it's just an exciting time when it just kind of hit me that it's only been a month.
Right. We're 30 days in.
Yeah. How is that even possible?
We still got 3 years and 11 months.
Yeah. As someone commented yesterday, I thought it was a good point that Biden's legacy is basically that dash between Trump's two terms.
I saw that.
Between 45 and 47.
Somebody referred to him as dash.
Yeah. It's not.
I did see that.
It's not a bad. Okay, let's take a short break. We'll be right back, and then we'll regroup a couple of local things we want to get to as well. So stay with us. This is, frankly speaking, here. Which break am I on? Here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back in the Hesselson studio. We are with Joe Sempolinski, if I can find the camera. There we go.
Hot tub.
The Hesselson's Hot Tub Studio. Okay, a couple comments from viewers. President Trump has made 50 public appearances in 30 days. He is playing a master chess game, and the Democrats can't even find the checkerboard. I
wouldn't be surprised if the 50 is low. Like, it may be higher.
He did 3 essentially press events on Inauguration Day, like back to back. Remember, you had his inaugural speech. Then he gives it like another hour.
And he had like a rally.
Yeah, then he had a rally. So I think that number
it's
might
at
be
least
low.
50.
Yeah. This is from Fred. Fred writes in, I read a scrolling headline yesterday. The Congress is considering legislation on phones in schools. Governor wanted how many millions to ban phones in schools? All the talking about smaller government and going back to the states. They really can't help themselves, can they?
So that's a state, not Congress. So that is a proposal in the budget process that we're going through at the state level.
Why does it cost $13.5 million?
That's what I don't get. So on principle, I don't have a problem with not having kids having phones during classroom time. When I was a kid, we didn't have cell phones. Certainly, there's been some safety concerns as can the parent get in touch with the student and those sort of things. I think that can be figured out. The idea that it's going to cost so much money, I have a tough time wrapping my head around that. My understanding is they want to buy, there's bags or something you can put it in. I don't know why you just don't put them on a shelf, or somewhere. The policy, I understand where it's coming from, and the policy I'm broadly supportive of, is we have to figure out the devil's always in the details, because if the kids are in school, they should be in school,
right.
Not, looking down at their phone. The cost side to it, I think we could probably do a lot better than the numbers that I have seen.
Yes. A couple other comments. Good morning, Frank and Joe. Giving Biden credit as a dash is an overreach. I think it's a dot at best. As in period, it's over.
It is over.
It is over.
It is over. No doubt about that. Yeah.
Ken writes in, Frank, with all the talk on Doge and tariffs, one of the most significant changes that Trump has made seems to be taking a back seat and securing the boards. It's interesting. I mean, he's front and center. He's still not, and I don't want to put words in Ken's mouth, but he's not saying like the media is that it's really President Musk. But he is willing to let Musk do the work.
Yeah, and they had their joint interview with Hannity a night ago or whatever, and 2 nights ago, whatever it was.
Well, no, they make it 2 nights.
Yeah.
They
spread it out.
A week's worth of interviews.
Oh, gotcha.
We should start doing that.
Straight up. We got Phil Palmisano for 7 days. And so, no, I think that, and Robert Kennedy Jr. comments on this when he was sworn in as Secretary of Health and Human Services, that he was sort of told, Trump's all about Trump or whatever.
Yeah.
And that he has found that not to be his actual persona. And so we are seeing that, where I think Trump, and this goes back to the second term thing, where I think Trump doesn't want Trumpism to end with his presidency. Because again, he himself will not be on the ballot. So he has to start thinking about, all right, who are the people around me that are going to take a more lead role, such that the political policies that he's in sort of continue beyond his time in office. So I think this is sort of some of that you're seeing, other people being given roles, whether it's the vice president or whether it's cabinet secretaries have been very prominent in this process. They haven't been sort of obscure things, or whether it's Mr. Musk.
Yeah,
I think that is part of succession planning, sort of an aggressive word for it, but just the idea that I would imagine, I'm trying to get inside the president's head, but I would imagine the president wants his political philosophy to continue after he's no longer the president.
And when you make a movement like that,
yeah, I mean he's got a lot of people that have been drawn into politics because of his positions and because of his philosophy, and I would imagine he wants that to continue. And that, as we said earlier, politics is a team sport. You can't all just be one person, and that's going to be a big conversation for the Republican Party going into the next presidential election. Is how does the Republican Party go forward with Trump being sort of this maybe an elder statesman or something, as opposed to being an actual candidate on the ballot.
And how cliche is it? Politics is so predictable sometimes. You know, they think it worked during the George W. Bush administration that the real president's Dick Cheney, right?
Yeah.
And now they're trying to get under Trump's skin that it's President Musk or Vance is no good, and then who was the other one? Oh, is Marco Rubio really Secretary of State?
I did see that article.
Yeah.
I think this is gamesmanship from liberal media.
That's all it is. Yeah. No. Okay. A lot of comments. So you get a lot of comments on the program.
That's good. That means people are watching.
I love it. Right? Absolutely. Okay. Here we go. Regarding cell phones in school and parents being able to contact their kids, parents can call the school and have the principals get in touch with the student like it used to be.
That's my position. Yeah. That's to me is the solution. Is just make sure that those standard operating procedures are in place. Back in my day, I'm 42 now. I'm old. But when I was in school with Frank Acom at Corning Painted Post West High School,
go Vikings.
Go Vikings. I know no negative to our friends who are Corning East or the Hawks now.
Yeah, if you're watching,
but go Vikings.
Yeah, that's right.
But back in my day, that's what it was. If the teacher if your parent needed to get a hold of you, that they called the school.
Well, this is what I don't
and that worked for 50 years.
So they're called yonder pouches, must be. That's what someone commented.
Yeah, those are the ones.
Spending.
Yeah, that's the pouch that's sort of the expensive version.
So
of it.
I went to a concert one time where he had to do that. It was Jack White because he didn't want people to take photos.
Right.
I don't understand how that's helpful in school because you have it, but then you feel vibrate.
Yeah.
So then what do you have to go to the teacher every time? So I got to see who this is.
Yeah, to me it's simpler to just have a rack by the door or at the entrance of the school or something. And I would imagine there is a more cost-effective solution to effectuate this same policy than the costs that are
as someone here says, just ban phones, cost nothing. That's true. People are mad because finally the books are being audited and waste and kickbacks are now in the light. I think
sunlight is the best disinfectant and everything should be transparent. And insofar as Doge is being transparent, Musk, everything he does, he puts on X.
Yeah.
I don't know how the guy could be more transparent.
Everything. I know. Good morning, Frank. And greetings from Caton. Hey.
Caton.
All right. Beautiful. On the Doge website, you can view actual contracts for the spending, like the one that is the Politico subscription. Thank you again for being the best part of the morning.
Hey.
Thank you.
The best part of waking up?
Is frankly speaking. The Politico subscription. That one made me angry.
Yeah, they were paying a lot
of
money. Subscription.
And Politico is not what you would call fair all the time to, our position as taxpayers, right?
They sometimes lean to the left.
Yeah, sometimes. You're being very kind this morning. All right, final comment before we move on. Joe is quite a motivational speaker. As he talks about Cuomo, Weiner, and Letitia James as permanent fixtures in the New York environment, I'm motivated to move to a red state.
Well, I want people to stay.
Yeah.
I want them to
stop
fight.
talking about it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I want to get
we
your
need
reaction.
to elect a new governor in 26 that's a Republican.
Let's just get those names. I mean, Weiner, that's city council. I mean, that doesn't really, whatever. I don't want him there. But
the man has a lot of addictions.
Yes.
One of them is politics, and he has others.
Yeah. And he says that Huma, now I'm getting the soap opera stuff, wants him to run.
I don't know the status of the relationship.
Yeah, she's married.
Yeah, isn't she to
Soros's kid?
Soros's son. Yeah. So Weiner's ex-wife is marrying Soros's son.
Let that sink in.
We did have a comment about the people behind the scenes of the Democratic Party. I'll just leave that
that's
in that area. Yeah.
Now, I reported on this morning, Joe, and for people just joining us, I don't have a lot of information, so I don't want to get into too much depth, but I did say I'd mention it to you, that according to our good friends at WLEA and Brian O'Neill, Steuben County is to appeal the judge's decision, in favor of Allard. This has been an ongoing drama,
I don't think they should appeal. I think that is a needless amount of money that would be spent. I think the sheriff does a very good job.
Yeah.
I think that the average person in Steuben County feels that Sheriff Allard does a very good job. And the proof of that is in the midst of all this controversy regarding the sheriff's indemnification. He was reelected unopposed, and there was not a lot of people that weren't writing it. Even though he was unopposed, there weren't a lot of people that weren't filling in that bubble for the sheriff. So I think the sheriff's doing a good job, and I think it's probably time to move on and not appeal this particular decision that came down in favor of the sheriff.
Well, it's also interesting because last time we talked with the sheriff and we talked with Phil, we talked with you, we talked about how important it is to know who you're voting for locally. And, of course, as one of the people that people were so mad, even in Chemung County, about what happened with the sheriff, because they said, wait, the voters voted for that person. So it's kind of like almost like a Mayor Adams thing in that regard. But that ties me into bad was a segue, but it is a segue.
By the way, the mayor of New York City is up for election this year.
Yeah.
Mr. Adams, whether you like Mr. Adams or don't like Mr. Adams, whether you think he's guilty, innocent, whatever, he was elected
by the voters.
By the voters, and he should not be removed from office. Let the people decide who the next mayor is in November.
Doesn't it think that Hochul has that much power potentially to take him out? But if we, as a people, say we don't like the governor, we want to do a recall. There's no recall.
There is no
gets
recall.
To decide?
That's right.
The legislature, impeachment. Well, that's not the voter. At the end of the day, I'm going to always side with the voter.
Right. So I think the true Democratic answer is let the people decide in November.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But that ties in with November because this is a big local year.
Yes.
So how is everything going? Because this is your Christmas petition time.
Petition time starts. Well, the petition window starts on the 25th, but our meeting where we're distributing the petition packets to the committee members is tonight. Our committee meeting, and we have about half of the county legislature is up for re-election. County-wide, we have two coroners, Mr. May and Dr. Cole, that are running for re-election. So I'm not anticipating a lot of controversy there, but it is a big effort to put any county-wide official on the ballot. The ballot access rules are very strict in New York State, so we have to do a lot of heavy lifting on that. In the two cities, in Hornell, everything's up. The mayor's up. The city council's up. About half of the city council is up.
We talked to Buckley not that long ago.
Yeah, so he's running for re-election. That's probably our biggest local race because that's a full-time mayor's position. That's the only full-time local mayor's position in Steuben County. So there's a lot that's happening, and it's a lot that's happening at the local and county level. The towns, every town, at least two of the council members are up. Most of the town supervisors. So it's a time where people want to get involved and run. That's what I've been dealing with over the last week is people wanting to get in and run and reaching out to me. There's a lot of coordination given all the different offices and who's going to get petitions and what packet and whatever. So thank you to all the folks that have been helping me out with that. That's myself, but a lot of other people that deal with all those logistics and paperwork and what have you. But also, these are offices where a single person, even if they're not running, if they're helping a candidate, can make a lot of difference because this is, especially if it's a primary situation, in an off year, there's not a ton of people that are voting, especially for a local office. So getting out and supporting a candidate of your choice is more effective than ever.
Right.
We obviously talk a lot about Kathy Hochul and Donald Trump and the governor and the president and all these things that go on, but a lot of the day-to-day stuff that affects you is more the local municipality you live in or the county you live in doesn't get as much attention, and your vote matters that much more, and a few hours of effort or a few days of effort can tip a race for a candidate that you think will do a good job.
And this is the time to get active. We always
now, this is the perfect time to get active.
And we've always said it on this program, and going back to the radio days, if you take out a petition for someone you support and believe in, you are their best friends.
They will love you forever.
Yes, because it's not fun.
It is not fun, especially doing it in February and March.
You haven't looked behind
April.
you, but as the snow falls and we have to knock on the doors. Okay, we are out of time, but we're going to read through the last comments quickly. My kid goes to Ernie Davis Academy. She says the yonder patches aren't even enforced anymore. Kids just walk around with their phones, just like everything else is. School teachers aren't held responsible for anything any longer because they don't want to end up in trouble. Something needs to be done because kids need to be educated when they're running the asylum. That will never be accomplished.
Like I said, I'm for kids not being on their phone. They should be learning.
What
a concept. They should be learning when they're in school.
All right. Great show, Frank. Still think you need more time. Oof. A podcast with people like Joe. There we go, Joe. You start the podcast. I'll come on, all right?
Gotcha.
Okay.
He wants to do it like Joe Rogan style.
Yeah. Mark writes in, I start my morning with coffee and frankly speaking, love it. Keep up the good work. Well, thanks, Mark. And finally, this is a perfect bookend to end this. Hope to see both of you at the meeting tonight.
Oh, so that's a committee person.
That's a committee person. Well, thanks for watching. And Joe, thanks for giving us so much time. I know we probably had 30 other things we should have brought up, but I hope you're happy with the way
I'm always happy.
Okay, great. This has been Frankly Speaking. Join us tomorrow morning. Assemblyman Phil Palmisano is going to be our guest tomorrow.
All right, he's a heck of a guy.
So make sure you tune in tomorrow starting at 6 for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV, Big Fox.